Hello, my beautiful people. Concert season is in full swing with a multitude of groups having world tours. With that in mind, it's time to take a look at something that has been bothering me for quite some time: concert culture. It can't be just me, but are concerts getting less enjoyable as of late? I always have something to complain about every single time I go to a concert, whether it's the crowd or the crowd or the crowd. Yeah, I'm a hater. I wanted to talk about concert culture as someone who goes to concerts often and how much it has changed since the pandemic. So the first concert I went to since the pandemic began was PTD in LA for BTS. And may I say, things were very different back then. We had to wear masks for the entirety of the show and bring our vaccination cards to check and stuff. It was something that was unprecedented, and it went pretty well for the most part. Well, sort of. I remember going to see the concert, not through my own eyes, but through the fan counts of others, and I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of a huge problem. It felt like I wasn't even there, despite the fact that I paid hundreds of dollars to see them and spent 2 nights seeing the boys. I wouldn't say that it legit began with BTS. In fact, it probably began with the Harry Styles concerts, which, by the way, are still happening as we speak. It began focusing more on interactions, which, for anybody who's been to a K-pop concert, is ripe with moments to where you interact with artists. There's another term for this called the YN moment, which originates from fanfiction, where your name is like a self-insert, usually for a romance fic about your favorite. So YN moment is basically for people who have an interaction with their favorite to where it feels like they had this connection with their favorite member. And so there's this huge trend back then in 2021 where people would do these compilations of them being noticed or seemingly noticed by their favorite at a concert. And it kind of stemmed from the Harry Styles concerts to where people are like, oh my god, I can't believe it got dragged to see Harry Styles or something like that. And it's just them reading a book or something and trying to get noticed, and then Harry points them out for, reading a book, whatever. It's a whole thing. But basically that's kind of the origin of the YN moment, and it's been persisting as of lately. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong about trying to get your favorites' attention. Hell, I've had my fair share of doing that at concerts before the pandemic. But it presents a much bigger problem when you include TikTok into the mix. Yes, TikTok has given the chance for people to be able to discover new music, like 50/50, for example, getting literally the biggest song of the year with Cupid, and all these other artists like Pink Panthers, as well as Ice Spice. But most of the content lately has also been trending with things that are happening at the concert. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like I've seen the Eras tour, the Taylor Swift tour, Renaissance for Beyonce, and the Auguste Yoongi BTS tour multiple times, despite only attending one of these tours through TikTok, which I don't know if that's a good thing or if it's a bad thing, to be honest. I remember I made this joke on Twitter during the PTD Vegas weekends where I felt like I've seen the show at least 10 times already through TikTok lives, concert viewings, the official live broadcast, to where I know exactly when to sit down or perk up. I knew exactly when to be able to okay, now this is the time when the carts come, or oh, now is the time for me to sit down because it's the VCR. It felt like I was seeing the same concert over and over again, which is kind of sickening after a while, because you're just oh my god, I've seen this 10 times. And it wasn't until I explained it to a friend was when I was oh my god, this is not okay. This is not funny. I've seen this concert 10 times already. And what's more depressing is that there comes an emergence of the same people over and over again at these shows. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and name some names because that's rude, but there are some people in my own fandom who I constantly see in Barricade, and it's kind of getting a little suspicious as to how many times they're there. I mean, these are the same people who literally content farm the hell out of these tours, and they do one for the Instagram feed, they do one for TikTok Reels, they do one for, you know, just in general, just live tweeting and things like that, which I'm not gonna lie, I am one of those people too. I love live tweeting as to what is going on and stuff like that. But if we're going to be honest, these tickets are really hard to get. I can't even begin to express how incredibly hard it is to get tickets for a band like BTS multiple times, let alone even just one time. It is really hard. And some of these people have bought tickets for resale, which could go upwards to like thousands and thousands of dollars. And it makes me wonder how much are they spending and how are they getting these tickets? And it wasn't until when I actually started getting tickets for Vegas was when I realized the ecosystem that is set in place, which is the more people you know, the more likely you are able to get a ticket, because if you have like 10 plus people trying to help you get tickets, there's a really high chance that you can be able to attend the show just based on that alone, which I've seen that happen. I had a friend who was able to get tickets for Vegas because someone had bought a ticket for her and said, oh, it's okay, like I'll pay for it and everything. And that's actually pretty not that rare to have, where you have a friend who could buy a ticket for you and it will be completely free and you just need to pay for the flights or just show up basically. And so that was kind of also which I'm going to get into. I think for most people, they don't really realize how rare it is to actually attend these concerts. Like, for example, I live in Los Angeles, so, you know, it's relatively easy for me to attend shows because it's literally right here. But what people don't really understand is when they take a step back, a lot of people don't really get to see these people all the time like we do. But yeah, after a while, you can't help but to feel a little bit bitter. I remember for PTD Vegas, I felt like I was experiencing some serious FOMO for not being closer, which is just batshit insane, because it's like, dude, like I am literally in the stadium watching them from the section 100. It's like, it's not like I had like a terrible seat or anything like that, but you just can't help but to feel like a little bit left out, because the people who are in front of you are even closer to the artist. And I've noticed that since the pandemic, I've been having this particular issue, which is just so like hard to explain to regular people without people being like, you're so, you know, full of yourself, or you're so, you know, you're obsessed for wanting to be closer or whatever. And it's just like, no, like you guys don't really understand. Like, you can't help but to feel FOMO because of these fan cams, these beautiful fan cams that are coming out from the floor, you know? And it's hard to believe this, because out of the millions of people that don't even get to see these acts at all, you're like one of the million, or like whatever it is. You're a part of this small niche of group that is able to see these groups. Like, I can confidently say that I am one of the very few people that get to see BTS at least once a year. And like most people have never seen BTS in their entire lives, or never seen BTS up close, or never seen BTS like interact like with them or whatever the hell, you know? And it kind of creates a certain type of competition for some reason. Like, if Yoongi isn't in your face smiling because you have like a dinosaur Samsung phone, there's almost like no point at you being at the show at all. Like, it almost feels like your experience just absolutely means nothing, you know? There's a sense of entitlement that fans have in order to capture a moment. And sometimes yelling to the artist where they're talking is kind of, for some reason, like the perfect timing or whatever. I've seen a lot of people kind of finding moments where it was like dead quiet to say something to the artist, and sometimes it can be extremely rude, it can be extremely sexual or sexualized. Like, I remember like I was watching a video in which Claro from, you know, in the indie pop scene was being sexualized and getting heckled by people who are like, you know, literally talking to her as if she's an adult when she's like literally so young. I've seen this, like, people would even start to deadass throw things at people. This past couple weekends ago, Baby Rexa actually got something thrown at her face, and she actually ended up having a really like nasty black eye and having to get stitches. I remember during the Harry Styles tour, there's also someone throwing a Skittle at Harry's eye, and he had to perform like that for the rest of the show. to where even I think the Skittles account even tweeted like, please don't throw our product at pop artists on stage. For K-pop in particular, the one I can remember the most is PT Vegas, where someone had thrown a rose or something at Jungkook, and the next couple of days people were just like throwing all kinds of things on these cards to the point where it was like overflowing. I remember seeing a fan count specifically where someone was like it was so full to where it was like hitting the people who were pushing the carts underneath, which to this day I cannot believe that those things are not automated, but anyways, that's besides the point. It was just the fact that people were just wanting to capture the moment, and it was really embarrassing to see how many people were attempting for that, and even seeing the members specifically like being like, please stop throwing things, and being really pissed at the fact that they were being thrown things. You can't help but to think like, was that like moment opportunity worth it for you? Especially given the fact that like Jin also was injured. What would have happened if something heavier than a plushie were to thrown at his fucking finger, his injured finger? Like, what would have happened then? It would have been a workplace injury, to be honest with you. And then we're also going to talk about the people who record during the host show. And I'm not going to sit here and say don't record or enjoy the moment, you know? Like, I remember several people like Jennie from Blackpink did this in the beginning of the tour, and a couple other pop artists have said this before. I think Mitski was like another person that said this, but I think it's becoming also a thing to record, not for memories, but specifically to make content. So there are people who are like, just speaking from my own experience, I would do one for the TikTok, then one for live tweeting on Twitter, then like an aesthetic looking one for Instagram. And I'm pretty sure I record maybe the killing part or like, you know, my favorite part in the show or something like that, but I don't necessarily record for the whole show. There was this person who was like really xenophobic, but there was this Chinese couple that recorded the August D show for pretty much from the beginning to end, and they were recording basically because they wanted to remember everything, but someone accused them for being a fan site and profiting off of the fact that these people were live streaming for like 2 hours or something like that. And it was really embarrassing to kind of see that that wasn't really the case. I think for the most part, when it comes to recording, I'm gonna leave people alone. If they want to fill up their entire phone with like videos, that's on them. But also, please be respectful in the sense of like, don't put the camera up in people's faces and blocking people's way. Like how people block other people's view with signs, which has happened way too many times to count. Actually, there is a pretty good quote about how we are obsessed with needing to photograph by Susan Sontag. She said, "Needing to have reality confirmed and experience enhanced by photographs is an aesthetic consumerism to which everyone is now addicted. Industrial industries turn citizens into image junkies and is the most irresistible form of mental pollution." I remember reading like a book about specifically this topic of image junkies and the fact that we have to be able to basically kind of confirm or validate the fact that the experiences happen through images. I know that some people, for example, the conspiracy theories, for example, like kind of come from the fact that there's no like footage, or there could be a possibility of it being doctored. And so I think that the human's ability to be able to wanting to get confirmation that they were there at the concert is very much a real thing. And I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I have to record sometimes to be able to remember the fact that I was actually at the show, because there's kind of an out-of-body experience that I can't help but to really just don't really know how to describe when you're at a concert, to where you feel like you're there and the artist is right in front of you, but at the same time you also feel like it's a dream. And it's kind of weird to explain to people because it's okay, like, I don't really get it, but you don't really get it until you're actually in the pit or being up really close to the person, was when you're like, oh my God, like, is this real? Am I really seeing this artist, or am I just seeing a screen, like a projection or something? I'm pretty sure someone can be able to explain this better than I do, but that's usually the main reason as to why I record, and also putting on the feed is also another thing as well. And I realized like I don't necessarily have these thoughts until the start of the pandemic. And before then, I would just record and enjoy the moments and stuff like that. But since 2021, since like concerts have been a thing, it's been this whole feeling of, was I actually there or not, you know? And I'm gonna be honest with you, I did go to see Yoongi twice, not because I wanted to see it again for the review, which not just because of that, but deep down, I wanted to be a part of the pit to say that I was. And it wasn't until when the show actually started was when I experienced that feeling pre-pandemic, which is like really actually caring about the concert and actually caring about the music and actually caring about what is actually happening and the experience of being at a concert. And I haven't felt that way since before the pandemic, and I actually was like bopping and jumping and screaming and singing along, and like this was like actually the first time in like 2 years to where I actually felt really excited to see the entire set list and seeing the whole staging and like actually taking it all in and stuff. And it really, I didn't really care that much in recording, and if I did, like it was probably like a good like minute or two here and there throughout the 2-hour concert. And for once, I was really with the entire crowd, and like the crowd really felt like it was there for the music. And that is just a complete 180 from what it was in the PTD shows. And I don't necessarily feel bad in saying that the August D shows are a lot better and more intimate than PTD shows. Like PTD shows, I felt like it was very impersonal, and like a lot of people were just there to say that they're there rather than enjoying the music, which is a separate issue in and of itself. I know it's a very controversial opinion as an ARMY, but hey, I've been for pretty much all the shows up until this point, and August D still remains to be my favorite. I miss that kind of energy for back in the day, you know, rather than dealing with people who are quiet to capture the HD fan cams for the Instagram reels, or do that weird trend of like, boys don't look at me, but my favorite idol looked at my section or area for a split second, and I slowed down the footage to make it look like they totally did look at me. Or having to squeeze by 5 people who are trying to perfectly capture the right angle of their VIP wristbands, or their squad pics that probably won't see the light of day because it's perfect enough, or being hounded by someone to follow them to get a freebie, or getting hit by a light stick or a sign. Like, these things I wish could just disappear, and I think we need to have some etiquette again. And some analysts say that it's Gen Z's fault that the concert culture has gone to shit, but truly I think it's my generation with the money from our work from home jobs that is contributing to the problem. While I don't think it's necessarily wrong to go as to many shows as possible, it has become a content farm for some people, and it glamorizes the idea of going to some shows. And because of that, I wanted to do a couple of reality checks that I've experienced from going to these concerts, in which I can help de-glamorize or de-influence some people as to what exactly is going on at these shows. Number 1, you can still get COVID. I think most people tend to think that COVID is over because live shows are just still a very huge thing, but I know a lot of people are still getting sick after these shows. Like, I know people who went to the PTD LA shows that like ended up getting sick. I know people who went to Lollapalooza for J-Hope ended up getting sick. There was like a round of like people who were, you know, going to Harry Styles shows and getting sick, people at the Eras tour getting sick. People are getting sick, they just don't want to talk about it because that would mean that, oh my, like it's a super spreader event. Like, whether you like to believe it or not, concerts are a super spreader event, and you still have to mask up. I still, like, some people were looking at me like, are you sure you didn't want to take that mask off when I was at August D? But I was like, nah, man, like, I'm wearing this, I'm keeping it on. So yeah, you can still get COVID. Number 2, camping is actually really physically, emotionally taxing. Like, I can't even begin to explain how difficult it is. I think some people like to glamorize it and saying, oh my god, I finally got hit, but people are not really recognizing the fact that you're spending days and days and hours on end just being at like a parking lot or something, or being at a sidewalk. And I know some people are like, I want to demystify a couple of the things when it comes to camping, and that is the fact that people are not necessarily there 24/7. Like people actually like, you know, go to work or something, or working from their computers or whatever because they have a work from home job. You know, they go back to the hotel and shower and eat or whatever when they need to. They have shift leaders where they come and check in their tents like every couple of like several hours or whatever. And so it's not necessarily something that is very completely strict to where you have to be there 24/7, although people have done it inappropriately to where they don't drink enough water or they don't get enough sleep, so they end up getting sick. And so like it's really not terrible. And no, I wouldn't say that I completely am for camping because I don't think it's worth it, but I do think that camping culture should be respected, and people really shouldn't be calling the cops on people for camping. Like it doesn't matter, because if there's a bunch of people who show up, the land is gonna get honored either way. Like really rarely do venues ever say, oh, this, you guys, you know, attended this in vain, but for the most part, it's going to be respected and honored no matter what it is. So you guys just kind of have to get used to it. Number 3, fans in person are a lot nicer than the people online. I noticed this really quick when I was at the August tour, and that people were always taking care of each other by giving people snacks, giving people freebies, water and stuff. Like I was feeling really like dehydrated from when I was at August for floor, and like people actually gave me some water and some candy to be able to kind of perk up stuff before the show. And like there's a bit of a kind of a good synergy that goes on and stuff, and I think that it's really nice to be able to be surrounded by that kind of community building type of thing, to where it feels like, oh my god. But yeah, like there's a sense of like community that people have when they're in person. They're a lot nicer. But also number 4, at the same time, there are people who are extremely rude, and these are the same people who kind of talk shit online and stuff like that, and they kind of permeate this into real life. Like I remember my friend who went to go see NCT Dream, and she was like sleeping and stuff, and like the line moved as she was sleeping, and she was like behind 30 people because they didn't wake her up. I've heard tensions kind of breaking out when ATEEZ and NCT Dream were having a tour, NCT 127, to where people would like threaten to call the cops and stuff like that, or, you know, trying to mess up tents and stuff like that, and trying to disrupt the peace of other people, which is just really just sad and disgusting in a sense of, we're all here for the same thing. Why are you being so aggressive and wanting to like hurt somebody or desire to hurt somebody? I have no clue. I remember my cousin and her best friend, as well as like multiple people who went to go see ATEEZ last year, had dealt with a lot of people who were mad dogging other people for looking nice and stuff like that. My cousin, my aunts in particular, went to go see ATEEZ, and like a lot of people were like, oh my god, your outfit is so cute, your sister is so cute, because you know my aunt is like a lot younger than most people. And people started to mad dog her the moment that my cousin said that it was her mom. And so it was getting so bad to the point where like they like fight on behalf of my aunt. And I've heard a lot of stories of people just being extremely obsessive and unhinged and wanting to get that YN moment or look like, you know, they would do anything to get that moment with ATEEZ. I remember I had this incident happen actually before the pandemic, to where I got sound check for Speak Yourself, and I remember walking around with my sound check lanyard and thinking to myself, oh my god, like, you know, I was really happy to get the ticket, but there was like a lot of people that were mad dogging me and, you know, whispering comments and like looking at me, glaring at me and stuff like that, to the point where I got really uncomfortable. I remember like almost wanting to cry at some point because it was just getting so bad. But it was like, this is out of jealousy and hate, and like it was just not it. I don't know, like I wish like people could be like a little bit more like kinder also and not be judgmental. I know like for PCLA, like a lot of people were talking shit about people who are wearing more revealing outfits, thinking that it was specifically for BTS. I'm sure that that happened with ATEEZ as well, if I remember correctly. And it just is disgusting as to see how many people throw feminism out the window the moment like an idol is close to their proximity. And it's just, dude, we're just here for a concert. It's really not that serious. Number 5. Everyone online will find someone to bully for each tour, especially the people who get to see their faves for multiple dates and stops. I think this has been more of a recent thing because I didn't really see it happen as much, or it became like a really niche thing back then. But I've noticed that people are starting to do like exposed threads on like people who are able to see the show like multiple times for multiple stops. I remember for the Augustine tour, one of my mutuals actually got quote unquote exposed for, you know, doing the things that supposedly she did, and like she actually ended up having to do like a whole entire thread kind of debunking it, but it was like still emotionally taxing for her. Like I actually had dinner with her and she was like really emotionally distressed because it sucks being the person who is like the main punching bag for a tour. And it's really embarrassing because it's like at the end of the day it's just like, I'm sorry you didn't get tickets, and honestly that's a much bigger issue in and of itself outside the people who get to see them multiple times, but we gotta stick together somehow, and this is not it. And lastly, I just want to say this, and I think this is like the biggest thing as to why like I think this is such a huge problem, and it's the class division is really real. And I didn't realize this up until PT Vegas happened, where I've heard people actually buying hotel rooms just to get the PCs. And mind you, resort fees are expensive, and Las Vegas hotels are really expensive. And so this is when I started realizing how incredibly rich some people can be, because you can not only are you getting resale tickets, but also not just one time, but multiple times. Like I've heard of people getting pit for ATs. I'm sorry I keep bringing up ATs, but that's the one that I've heard the most. Going to every single stop outside the US, get fan calls and fan signs, and none of them actually tell others as to how they get into it. And it's like this whole thing of how much money are you actually spending? Like we don't really know. And I've actually heard a rumor that like it costs about $70,000 to guarantee like a spot into a fan call. And so you can imagine 70,000 divided by, you know, the cost of the album, how many albums there are. I have seen ATs specifically at these like swap meets out here in the LA Metro, in which they're like desperately trying to sell these like albums that they had to like get rid of because of a fan call. And it can help to feel like kind of like an MLM type of thing where you have to buy product in order to get something in return. I can't help but see the parallel there, and maybe it's just me, but this is really bad. And it just also shows how incredibly dedicated, like to almost to a scary extent, how much people are willing to get that YN moment regardless of what it is. Unfortunately, I really don't have any solutions as to how the concert experience is going to change other than bringing these things to light. And the problem isn't necessarily the concert goers, but the fact that inflation and false scarcity has made it impossible to attend shows anymore, creating a very clear class division between people who can afford tickets versus people who can't afford them. I'm also honestly a really lucky person to have attended some really hot and popular shows this year despite financially struggling, but most aren't so lucky, living in places that tours don't come that often or at all. Ticketmaster is also price gouging like wild with dynamic pricing, which is pricing based on demand, creating a lesser chance for people to attend even if they are around here. And even though it has always been, it shouldn't be where the ultra rich are grabbing the tickets all the time and every single time. This episode has been mostly scripted because I actually have a lot to say like about like concerts, because I've been going to concerts since like, you know, since I was younger and stuff like that. And seeing the big shift between like pre-pandemic and like post-pandemic or pandemic era is just really shows like how messed up this system is. And you know, all at the end of the day, it's all coming towards late stage capitalism. The fact that like people are willing to exploit the hell out of us being fans, and I think we need to do something about it. It's unfortunate the fact that like the most that the government can do is just show the hidden fees and that's it. I think we need to get rid of them completely, and be able to bring that back to the artists. And also I remember there's like a study out there that like most of people's income comes from tours and stuff like that, and so like, you know, like a lot of small artists can't necessarily go on tour because of the fees and stuff like that. And so, you know, Ticketmaster's evil. I want to say that at the end of the day. And yeah, Ticketmaster is evil. That is all I want to say. And I think we need to band together to dismantle the monopoly that is Ticketmaster. What are your thoughts on live music? Leave it in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.